Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls build video with me, Sherman. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Swtchblade. I was going to call it the Witchblade, but it didn't work because that's taken, so. But this is a Magicka Nightblade, and it is both a DPS and support build, so it's really kind of a cross build for this purpose, and it works really well. So this is a small group play build. This is not a trials build. If you want to make it a trials build, you can, but it takes a lot of manipulation with the gear, and you have to change a lot of things out, and it's just not really worth it, to be honest. I like the way it's set up, and it works out really well. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to take a look at the character sheet first. I do run a Dark Elf. You can run a Burton or a High Elf if you want, but I find the Night Elf works really well for this because of the way it works. Now this is, again, it is a DPS support build, so remember that. You do have 60 points in the Magicka, 4 into health. 4 points into health is the 64 points that you have to put in your attributes. You can put it all into magic if you want. You don't need to put the 4 points into health. I put the 4 points into health just to compensate for the lack of health that my character would have otherwise. Because if you look, when I switch to my staff, I actually go up to 18. And when I'm over here, I'm at 17. It's a really easy thing to fix, though. If you want to just go 64 into health, you just need to put one small glyph on your gear somewhere that's health, if you want to do that. So let's go ahead and take a look. So we have 38,000 Magicka, 17k health, 14k stamina. I am running a stat food to get that 14k health, and the reason why is for blocking and dodge rolling, because this build does move between up close combat and ranged combat. It works that way really well. And like I said, this is a solo small group build. You have a 2,224 spell damage. I could probably get more out of it, but I really don't. I'm not looking to get a lot more spell damage out of it, to be honest. So 68% crit, 12k spell resistance, 10k physical resistance. If you guys are wondering how I have such high resistances in light armor, I'll show you guys here in a minute. I am running the Thief Stone with Worm's Remnant. I do have Inner Light on both bars, so I get major proficiency, which increases my spell critical by 10%. And I also have Tri-Stat Food. Excuse me, guys. Moving on to the gear, I am running a 2-piece Night Flame set. A lot of people don't like the Night Flame set because of the chance, the proc chance is super low, so you could switch this out for one of the other healer type sets if you wanted to. I run this one because of the health bonus. Excuse me. Or you could even change it out to where you're running a 5-piece one set and then one piece of this if you wanted to. Excuse me, gosh, I'm bad allergies today, guys, bad allergies. Next up, we have a 5-piece Julianus. Now, if you notice one of these pieces is reinforced, you need only one piece of gear reinforced. I would suggest doing it with your heavy piece, but this piece seems to work the best for me, is the helm. This is infused. I do need this in the vines, so that way I can get that 70% critical. There's a reason why you go for a high crit anyways. It's not just for the damage, it's also for the healing. This Night Flame also can proc a heal, by the way, at a 3% chance. It doesn't happen too often, but when it does, this thing has one of the highest heals for group heals as a support thing. Next up, like I said, Julianus. I need a drink. Just hold on a sec. So we have Julianus. The main reason why we run the Julianus is for the crit and for the spell damage. Now, you only get the spell damage when you are on the dual wield bar. As soon as you swap, you will lose that bonus spell damage. Next up, the next 5-piece we are running is the Worm Remnant set, or Worm Cult is what a lot of people call it. And we run this not just for the spell damage, not just for the max magic or the magic recovery, but it is for the 5-piece, which reduces the cost of your magic abilities by 4% for you and up to 11 group members within 28 meters. So they have to be within 28 meters for this to take effect on them, and it will reduce their magicka cost by 4%. So this really helps not only you, but it helps for your group as well. And it's a nice way to support your allies by doing this. So this is up all the time. Julianus is not. So on the jewelry, we are running all spell damage. I do have 2 purples and 1 blue. I am going to get this one changed out, and when I do, I'm going to actually leave the recovery on here and probably put a gold recovery glyph on it and change these both to gold spell damage. So my spell damage will go down by about 100 points, but that's it, because I'm going to get 14 more points on both of these, and I'm going to lose the 160 from this. So I'm only going to go down just a little over 100 points, which is fine, in spell damage. Next up, I am running 2 Julianus daggers. One has weakening on it, and the other one has absorb magic to give you magic a return. So if you do need to weave in a couple light attacks with this, you have a chance of getting that magic, a little bit of magicka back as well. Both of these are sharpened along, and only these are sharpened. On the back bar, I'm running a Resto Staff, a Julianus Resto Staff, and it is empowered to increase my healing effectiveness for when I'm on my Resto Staff. Because I am a Nightblade, but I only run 1 siphoning skill per bar. So I don't get extra healing effectiveness. I only get 3% from both of those abilities. So with that 6%, I get 9% total. And then on top of that, I get 10% from the champion points, making me have a 19% healing effectiveness. But since I crit heal most of the time, I don't need to worry about how little my heals are. I need to worry about crit healing all the time. So that is the gear. Let's go ahead and take a look at the skills, starting with the front bar. The front bar is mainly a DPS bar. So we run Lotus Fan, and this is a really good direct damage ability, because you teleport to the enemy, you hit them for initial burst damage, and then you throw out daggers, hitting all enemies around them, including the target, and you apply a dot to them. This ability of theirs does get increased with Thaumaturge, so I don't have any points on Thaumaturge, but if you want to put some points on Thaumaturge to get the extra damage out of it, you can. And this is the only Nightblade ability that works off of Thaumaturge, by the way. On to the next one, we have Concealed Weapon. This is a really good one to use if you want. You don't have to use this. You can swap this out for a, like I would suggest swapping this out for like Sap Essence or something, because of the fact that this is just a ability kind of thing. But it does a lot of damage, and that's nice. And it also gives, while slotted, and increases your movement speed while you're stealth and invisible by 24%. This is why this one works really good for solo play, is this ability right here. Next up, we have Crippling Grasp. This is the one siphoning ability you have on your bar for the extra healing while you're on this bar. It keeps that extra healing effectiveness up. But it does a lot of damage up front, or it does damage up front and does a lot of damage over time. This does not get increased by Thaumaturge. This only gets increased by magic damage. So anything you can do to increase your magic damage, the better off you are with this ability. Next up, we have Impale. Sorry, not Killer's Blade. We have Impale. And this is a magic blade that you can throw at a distance, and it is also your execute. So it does a lot of damage when the enemy's below 25% health. Next up, we have Inner Light. This is to give us major proficiency, but also to give us max magicka by 5%. Being a Nightblade, if you have one of these skills, siphoning skills equipped on your bar, you do get extra magicka. You get 8% max magicka, and that's why I have it on both bars. I have one siphoning ability and Inner Light, is to give me that a lot more extra magicka on the character. Next up, we have Soul Harvest. Now, Soul Harvest isn't one that a lot of people run with, because of the fact that it's a magicka damage ability. Unless you're playing a magicka character, it really doesn't work. The other reason why a lot of people don't run this is because of Major Defile. They say it's not needed in PvE. It's a really effective skill in PvE even, especially if you're fighting a lot of enemies that do heals, especially bosses in dungeons. Reducing their healing effectiveness can really help, especially like Direfrost Keep, Banished Cells 2, Banished Cells 1. There's a lot of healing that goes on in there, and a lot of other dungeons as well. There's a lot of healing that goes on from enemies. So that's really good. It's also nice for the ultimate generation. While you're slotted, anytime you kill an enemy, your ultimate gain is increased by you get 9 ultimate every time you kill an enemy. So it's a really good way to build ultimate, to use the ultimate on the back bar. So let's go ahead and move to the back bar. We have Reaper's Mark. Now this is the one ability on the build that you can swap out for a heal when you're in a group, and I usually swap it out for Blessing of Restoration. I know a lot of people like to use Combat Prayer. I like to use this on this particular character because of the fact that it does give the minor ward, minor resolve, and this is more of a support DPS build than it is a healer build. So giving that little bit of support of increasing the minor ward, minor resolve for 15 seconds seems to me a lot better than giving somebody 8 seconds of, or extra damage for 8 seconds, or 6 seconds. It just seems to work better. This does. So yeah, you can swap it out for Reaper's Mark, and it does give you a lot more resistances, which is nice. And there's a reason why you have the high resistances too, or what higher resistances, and I'm going to show you guys this real quick when I get to the one of the other abilities. Next up we have Degeneration. Really great ability from the Mage's Guild tree, and it does improve your, not only your magic, but it also improves your spell damage as well, because it grants minor sorcery or major sorcery. But the thing about this build is you do a lot of heavy attacks with the Resto Staff to get resources back, and while active, your light and heavy attacks against an enemy have a 15% chance to heal you for 138% of the damage caused. This is a really, really powerful ability for a single heals on yourself, especially that 15% chance. It also does damage up front, and it heals you. And it heals you for so much up for 6 seconds after you cast it. So it's a really good one to have and to keep active because of that heal. Next up we have Refreshing Path. Now this is the one that's going to give you a buff to your resistances. The only problem is that since you're not wearing heavy armor, you get a smaller amount of the resistances, and it only gives you a 25% increase because you're only wearing 1 heavy armor piece. So you're increasing this 6 seconds by 25%. It lasts for about 7.5 seconds now, so not a whole lot longer. So you really have to be careful with this one. But it does give you your Major Ward and Major Resolve, which gives you both 5,280 to spell and physical resistance. So you want to keep Refreshing Path up as much as you can, so you can keep your resistances close to 17,000. The reason you want to get around 17,000 spell or physical resistance is because when you have that high of spell or physical resistance, you reach what's called the 25% mark of damage reduction or damage blocking from your resistances. So you try to keep that up as much as possible. Next up we have Funnel Health. This is a great damage ability, but it's also a really nice heal that you can do for you and one of your allies. And it's very similar to the Resto Staff ability. If you guys don't know how Resto Staff ability rapid regeneration works, it heals you and one other person. So when you cast this, or 2 other allies, it'll cast it on you and then 2 other people. Those 2 other people, if you have a 3rd person in your or 4 people in your party, one of them won't be healed. If you cast it again, that other person will get the heal, because what it does is it alternates healing. And the same thing with Funnel Health. If you cast this 3 times, you'll hit all 4 of your allies as well as yourself with the heal. So I'm just letting you know. Next up you have Inner Light again for the 5% max magic and the spell crit. And then the final ability is our ultimate that we are going to be using a lot when we're in group play, and that is Veil of Blades. This is by far one of the best support skills in the game, because it does the reduced movement speed of the enemy, it does damage over time, and it gives your group major protection for the duration of the ability, which is 17.8 seconds. You get major protection, you get that reduced movement speed on the enemies, and you get that damage over time, which is insane. And that major protection reduces the damage your group takes by 30%. So it's a really, really powerful thing. But the nicer part about it is oh my gosh, I can't even think of what it's called now. Synergy on it, and that is the shadow thing. Low health allies in the target area can activate Hidden Refresh, granting invisibility, increasing their movement speed by 50%, and healing them for 30,000 health almost 30,000 health over 4 seconds. that is way too powerful of a heal to pass up not having. Now you can switch this out, and I'm going to show you guys a few other things that you can do real quick. So you can switch out this morph or this ability for Soul Siphon, which is a heal that you can do, and it costs 150 ultimate versus the 200 for Veil of Blades. But this one doesn't do damage over time, but what it does do is it grants you and your allies major vitality, increasing healing received by 33% for 4 seconds. Very similar to the Resto Staff's ability of major mending for 3 seconds, but this does for 4 seconds, and it's 33% of their max health. So if you do this, you got to remember, they're going to get hit with a 9,000 point heal, and then they're going to get that 26,600 health over 3.5 seconds. Well, they're going to have that major vitality on them for that 3.5 seconds of that other heal, and that other heal is being increased by 33%. Insane heal. Now, this is if you want to run that ability. It is a very powerful one. I would suggest, possibly if you're playing a really hard dungeon, running this. If you're not playing a really hard dungeon, run Veil of Blades. So on to another thing that you can do. You can swap the Resto Staff out for a Lightning Destruction Staff, and if you do, you can switch out Reaper's Mark with Wall of Elements. The reason you're going to want to go Wall of Elements is for the off-balance chance of the enemies, but also to do a lot of damage, because this setup does a lot of damage with the Lightning Staff. You also want to do a lot of heavy attacks with the Lightning Staff, and one of the morphs with the Lightning Staff is... in the Trifocus, I think it is, shock heavy attacks damage all nearby enemies for 61% of the damage done. So that means it does extra damage to the enemies around it, to the target that you're hitting. So it's kind of a nice AoE setup with that, running the Wall of Elements, running the heavy attack, and then also Refreshing Path. If you also want, you can even swap out with Impulse and put it in place of this one, and then swap out on the front bar. Like I said, you can swap out this for your Siphoning ability, Sap Essence. So this way you get the extra heals in there, plus you get some extra damage in there, and you gain more of this bonus, which is Soul Siphoner, which increases the healing done by 3% for each siphoning skill slotted. You'll have 2 on each bar then. If you're running this on the back bar and this on the front bar, you'll have 2 siphoning abilities per bar, which will increase your healing effectiveness by 6% then. So it's a nice thing. Also, on the Undaunted side, try to get the Necrotic Orbs unlocked, and go with the orbs that do damage. Don't go for the healing orbs if you want. And you can put the Necrotic Orbs on the character in place of Lotus Fan if you want to, or in place of Reaper's Mark if you want to get that way of supporting your allies by giving resources back. You can do that, and it does work out really well. The other thing you can do is you can swap out the front bar. You can swap out the dual wield, go with 5 piece of Worm Remnants on your gear, and then go with a willpower set on the other part, because it will give you increased magic and spell damage, and then the Worm's Remnant's going to give you a lot, and then you can go for more of a healer build because you can run 2 Resto Staffs in. So those are options of things that you can do with this build, just letting you guys know. With the other stuff, you definitely want to get the passive for this. You want to get the Magicka controller, so for every Magicka or Mage's Guild ability, you get 2% max Magicka. And since you are running Inner Light on the front bar, and on the back bar you're running this, you're going to get, on the back bar, you're going to get 2% per. So you're going to get 4% extra Magicka on there, and 2% on the front bar. So it's really kind of a nice thing. I was going to actually switch out the refresh, one of my abilities to take Equilibrium, but since they made the change to Equilibrium, where it reduces the healing and damage shields, I kind of was like, it's just not worth it, kind of thing. Next thing I want to point out, also go for the Soul Magic things. Try to get these 2 right here, because these are really good for you as a player. This one, when killing an enemy with a weapon ability, you have 5% chance to automatically filling up your soul gems. But this is only when you use a weapon ability, so it's not really worth it. But try to get Soul Strike for this build too. This is another really powerful ability that you can put on the front bar instead of this. because it does so much damage. It's just insane. So that's the skills and stuff. But like I said, it's up to you on how you want to place your skills. These are the skills I like to run. Now let's go ahead and jump into the champion points, because this is the area everyone's really wondering about, I'm guessing. So for champion points, I do run my champion points a lot different than most people, and I try to create a build that is has this really kind of universal setup to what benefits they can get. I spread my points out more. I don't focus into certain areas. So let's go ahead and start with the steed. And in the steed, we have 23 into Ironclad, reducing the damage we take from direct damage attacks by 10%. That's why we put 23 into there. We also have 20 points in the spell shield, increasing our spell resistance by 1900. Remember what I was talking about, getting those resistances close to 17,000 when you're buffed? That's why, is to get that reach that 25% blocking damage, and I'll show you guys this here in a second, explain why you want that. Next up, I have 20 into light armor focus, giving me 1900 extra physical resistance. I also have 43 into hardy, 43 into elemental defender, and 23 into thick skin. I have 43 into both of these, giving me 10% damage reduction from pretty much everything, and they do stack with the thick skin, which gives me 10% reduced damage from damage over time. They do stack with that, so that's actually 20%, and it also stacks with Ironclad, which makes it 20%. So when you have that you block the initial damage of 25%, and you're only taking and you're reducing the damage afterwards by 20%, you're actually reducing a lot more than that. It's closer to 25, and then 20% of it. You're actually reducing a lot more damage than that, because you're blocking 25% of the damage with your resistances, then your damage reductions kicking in and reducing that leftover damage by a certain percentage. And the greater the percentage, the less damage you're going to take. Now, if you guys don't know, a lot of NPCs in the game do light and heavy attacks, and this is where the next area comes really, really handy, is because of it. You want to have 16 points in here. I don't quite have it yet, but I will. And once I have 16 points in here, as you can see, it will reduce the damage I take from light and heavy attacks by another 10% with 16 points. And what that will do is it will not only stack with stack with hardy and elemental defender, it will also stack with Ironclad, making it 30% damage reduction from light and heavy attacks. So any light and heavy attacks I take, I will actually be reducing the damage by 30%. So I'm reducing the damage even greater. So it's pretty crazy. I have 19 points in a quick recovery, increasing my healing received by 5%. The reason I did this is because you don't get a lot of healing effectiveness with a lot of healers now. Especially even the Templar only gets an 8% of minor mending. So you need that extra healing received regardless of what you're playing, and this is the best place to get it from, is your champion points. So that's why I put 19 points into here, is to give me that 5%. Next up, we are in the green tree. I have 23 into Warlord, giving me 10% reduced cost of break free. Playing this game solo and playing with groups, there's a lot of times where you will get stunned, you will get immobilized, you will get have different things, you get knocked down, and you got to break free from that stuff. And this gives you a reduced cost of 10%. And this is why I have a high stamina, is so that that cost doesn't hit me very hard, so I still have the ability to dodge roll and sprint if needed. Next up, I have 16 in the sprinter, and that is to give me reduced cost of sprinting by 10%. And this is another way to allow me to get better mobility on my character without wasting a lot of stamina by burning through my stamina really quick. It's not going to burn through it as fast, and I can sprint for a greater distance because it's reduced cost. Next up, I have 15 into bashing focus. I will put one more point in here to make it 10%. And again, the reason why, as you can see, it reduces the cost of my bash cost by 10%. Now, bashing, if you guys don't know, is this. This is bashing. Holding block and attacking is a bash. It also has a chance of interrupting your enemy, which is something that most people don't realize, that it is a very effective way to set an enemy off balance. So anytime you can block a heavy attack, or you can get an enemy from doing some kind of ability, and you can knock them out of it by bashing, you also have a chance of interrupting them, which also sets them off balance. So this is a really important thing to remember when you're even in dungeon play. So that's why I have that I have that reduced cost in bashing. Next up, I have 43 in Arcanist. Increases my magic recovery by 10%. I am a Nightblade, so I get 15% already. An extra 10% makes it 25% magic or recovery. I have no abilities other than that give me magic or recovery, so I have to be really careful here with my magicka. If you are going to use any kind of potions, though, go for magicka recovery potions, and then go for ones that give you, like, you could go for ones that give you major sorcery. You could go for ones that do, like, give you healing, extra healing or whatever, or even extra magic or recovery if you wanted to. Those are options, just letting you know. Next up, I have 43 in Taxi to increase my magic return from my fully charged heavy attacks while I'm on my Resto Staff. That's my main reason. The Resto Staff also gives me 30% magic return on top of the 30% I get from a heavy attack. On top of that, I get another 10%. So I actually am supposedly getting like 60% or 70% magic return, which is really, really good. So next up on the back bar, we are on the back bar. On to the next part, sorry. We have 23 in the Shadow Ward, which reduces our block cost by 10%. Again, remember I have a high stamina for a reason. It's so I can block multiple attacks, and this allows me to do it at a reduced cost. So it's a really nice one to have. Also 23 in Tumbling, because I do teleport into attack enemies. Once I do my damage, I roll dodge out and use my Resto Staff for heavy attacks. I do like having that reduced cost in dodge roll. It is not only 10%, because I am wearing 511, so I do get the medium armor benefit here. Once I have it unlocked, I'll have this as well, and it also reduces it by 4% in both sprinting and dodge rolling. So it's actually 14%. That's why I put the 10 points in, or put the points in there to give me 10%, is to give me that extra reduced cost in this. Next up, I have 10 in Befoul. Now, you'll see this says 10%. Now, Befoul and Bastion are kind of a weird thing. But Befoul is this one. Bastion's over in the red tree here. And these are things that give you percentage increases to your effectiveness of damage shields and your effectiveness of healing reduction. Now, these are two things that I learned about 2 weeks ago, how they really work. Actually, it was a little bit more longer than that. It was probably about 4 weeks ago. And I learned how they really worked. And I was like, oh, wow. So, healing effectiveness, reducing the enemy's healing effectiveness by 10% does not stack with Major Defile or Minor Defile. In fact, what it does is it gives you a percentage bonus of that percentage. So, for example, just so you guys can see, this ability here is 30% normally. Well, 10% of 30% is 3%. And that's why it says 33%, is because it increases that by that value. It gives you 3% more. And that's why the foul works the way it does. You will never get a 70% healing reduction. You will only get that percentage bonus. The same thing works for Bastion and Bone Shield, and Bastion and the Templar's damage shield, because the Templar's damage shield and Bone Shield both work off of max health. And whatever it gives you a damage shield based on a percentage of your max health. So if I were to have anything the Bastion, and I were to use this, and I had it unlocked, and I used it, you see how it says the Bone Shield absorbs damage equivalent to 30% of your health? Well, Bone Shield is increased by a percentage by Bastion. So it increases it by the percentage bonus. So if you have 20%, it's going to give you 20% of the 30%. It's kind of weird how it works. Now, if it's a flat number, like, say, the light armor annulment, it will actually give you 10% of that number. So 10% of 10,000 is 1,000. So I would actually go up to 1,000 points of it with 10%. With 20%, I would actually go up 2,000 points, I think it is. So it's like you get that bonus. And that's how Bastion works with damage shields. And how the other one works, Befoul works with the healing reduction. Now, I don't know if any of the other percentage things in here work the same way, but they might. So I've only found out those two. So moving on to the blue tree, I have 43 into Bless, which increases my healing done by 10%. Now remember, 10% plus my 3% plus my 6% for my staff is 19% healing effectiveness. That's all I have. But I crit heal for a lot. And when I crit heal for 20% more because I have 56 points into Elfborn. Your crits, all crits are increased by, whether healing or damage, are increased by 50% normally. This increases it by another 20% with 56 points, and 23 points into it will only make it 10%. So you get two options here for that jump point, is what I call it. What a lot of people call jump points is how you place your points. My thing is called the sweet spots. 23 and 56, and 56 works really well with this build. Next up we have 43 in the Elemental Expert. This gives us 10% extra magic damage, Flame, Frost, and Shock, but I don't use Flame, Frost, or Shock right now. I just use magic damage, so I get that extra 10%. Next up into the middle tree, we have 16 into Staff Expert, which increases our light and heavy attack damage by 10% with the staff. And then also on the Master at Arms, we have 23, giving us 10% extra damage against our, 10% extra damage with direct damage. So any of our light and heavy attacks, with our abilities, most of our abilities that we use from the character are direct damage, so they always get that 10% extra damage on them. Next up, we have 14 into Shattering Blows. Now, you don't have to put the 14 points in here. I was actually putting them here and waiting for the rest of my points to come in, and then I'm going to respec, and I'm going to take all these points and probably put them into here to see how close I can get to 56. Because if I can get this to 56, I'll get another 20% out of it, which means my character will get 20% more damage. If not, what I will do is I will put most of it into Thaumaturge, possibly to get that extra damage over time, even though I don't do any extra damage over time because I'm not using a shock staff. So that, or I might put it into Spell Erosion to get me extra spell penetration to increase my damage. The reason I put it in here though for now is because there was a boss I was fighting and it had a damage shield, so I wanted to be able to break that damage shield. It was driving me nuts to fight it, solo it, and this helped me defeat it because I did that. So that's it for the champion points. I have nothing in this tree, but that's it for the champion points, and that is it for the Switchblade. And the reason it's called a Switchblade is because it does go from dual wield to staff and back. I just thought it was kind of cool, and it kind of fit for it. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the build in action so you guys can see for yourself how it works. We're going to go over here and we're going to pick a fight with two giants at the same time, just to kind of give you guys an idea. And I'm going to go ahead and mark this one up, because we're going to start with fighting him. And you guys can see for yourselves how the build works. Whoops, get off me, dude. Oops, I don't have my food up anymore. Alrighty. Well, you saw how that works. It doesn't take a lot of damage because I keep my path up a lot as much as I can, and I also keep that the concealed weapon up, and concealed weapon also applies my shadow ward, which increases my resistances by 5, my major ward and major resolve by 5,000 and something. And that's mainly why I do it, is for that purpose, so I can keep my resistances up higher and everything, and I can make my character more effective with not only DPS but also with support, because anytime I do any healing, I heal for a lot more. When you're playing in a dungeon though, you will be sitting on your resto staff a lot in a way, because especially if you're playing a main healer, you will be sitting on the resto staff. If you're not playing main healer, you will be on the dual wield majority of the time, and as you saw there fighting those two guys, I went through a lot of magicka, so you will be switching to the resto staff to apply a lot of heavy attacks to get that magicka return. So, and as you can see, well, that didn't even work. He died before I had a chance to finish. But usually I can fill my magicka bar up pretty quick with a few heavy attacks from my resto staff, even with a 923 magic recovery, because the way the recovery system works. I would go through all this stuff, guys, but keep an eye out because I do have a new video coming out that's going to explain how all that stuff works here soon. It does go over the thing with damage shields, Bastion, and Befoul, and how they're additive to percentage values and all that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That is the Switchblade, like I said. So if you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit the like video. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can hit the subscribe video. I do have a few more builds coming, and then a couple more after that, because I'm going to be making I do have a few alterations to some other builds that I need to do beforehand. But I am working towards that, and hopefully I'll have them out soon-ish. On top of that, I have other videos coming out about Morrowind, about the world bosses, about the dungeons and the public dungeons, and about the delves, and then also some of the quest stories. I'm going to be doing those as well, but I'm not going to do the full things on those, and here's why: is no spoilers. So we'll leave it at that, and I'm going to leave it at that, and that's it. So I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and I will see you all later. Bye.